Now, for more insight into the economic ties between China and the EU, I spoke to James Bennett. He's a fellow with the Economic Policy Center. I began by asking him about the impact of Brexit.
Well, I would say the biggest item is that's been thrown into some uncertainty by the vote of the UK to leave the EU. And of course, this diminishes the EU's economic clout by about 18%. And it throws some complications into the works until we have some better clarity as to what the post-Brexit economic relations between the UK and the EU are going to be, and then subsequently between the UK by itself and China.
Now, speaking of that, just last year, obviously, former British Prime Minister David Cameron said ties with China are in this golden era. So between Brexit and then now his resignation and Theresa May now stepping in, does that put anything in jeopardy, do you think, when it comes to this golden era?
I think the only thing that's in jeopardy is one particular implementation of that relationship. And obviously, some Chinese institutions have made economic and investment decisions based on this idea of Britain as being a particularly good launchpad into the broader European market. If Britain remains, say, an EEA member and continues to have free trade with the continent, those plans can probably proceed without much adjustment. If the relationship is somewhat different, then there will be some adjustments, but I think not as many as people were fearing. I think that in actuality, it could be an even more golden era if, for instance, the UK and China strike a new trade deal between themselves, and because Britain is sort of sailing alone now in the fast convoy rather than stuck in the slow convoy, we could see a UK-China free trade relationship more advanced and deeper than a broad China-EU relationship.
Now, James, one of the areas of friction in that relationship has been this ongoing China-EU dispute over steel overcapacity and market economy status. Just how committed are both sides to really trying to find a middle ground in this situation?
Well, obviously, the people on both sides who take the big picture, who look at all their trade relationships with each other, have a strong incentive to have some kind of compromise. But steel is as a global industry, it's under pressure. And the steel actors in each of the countries where it is still important are under very strong pressure to maintain the ground they have. They're going to be, it's going to be difficult to get concessions out of them. So it's a case as, does the EU have a strength to impose will for the benefit of the entire economy on particular actors who will take a substantial amount of pain? If they, frankly, if they compromise enough to make a deal work, that will be painful for a number of the steel producers. Now, historically, the way you deal with that is by special aid, adjustment aid, whatever, to the impacted areas. Now, just having lost the one of the two main prosperous countries in the EU, it's harder to find the money to do that. So I see a difficult situation ahead over the next couple of years in the steel sector.
Now, something that could potentially help, we did see that at the most recent summit, they formed a joint steel working group. And over the years, China does plan to cut up to 150 million tons of overcapacity in its steel industry. So perhaps this is something, I'm not sure if this is something we can expect in the short term, but it does seem to see at least some positive momentum in that direction.
Yeah, I think that this is one of these cases where if you make those kind of compromises, you can keep the system going for another decade or two. It's more like you're postponing a adjustment, but you're postponing it into an era in which many things might be quite different in manufacturing. The rise of things like 3D manufacturing and beyond it, nanotechnology, may so transform the manufacturing world that all of our assumptions will need readjustment by then. So politically, it would be a practical compromise. Whether it will be enough to make it work, I'm not sure.